Good day, everybody. Today we're moving on to talking about cellular respiration. A lot of times when I talk about respiration, the first thing you guys think of is breathing. And this is related, but we're talking about how cells take sugar and turn that into energy for the cell to use, into that ATP. So make sure you set up your notes for Cornell notes, a topic, a date, the teacher. Write this target. This is kind of our essential questions here. How does the cellular respiration break down food and oxygen molecules to form new compounds that can transport energy to muscles? So again, like our ATP, that is the power that powers your cells, right? So how are we going to go from food into that ATP? So before we move on to going through all those steps, think about this question. This is a good left-hand question for your notes. Do you weigh less in the morning? So assuming like you have food at night and then you were to sleep all through the night, would you weigh less? Do you think that's true? It's kind of a common myth. Do you think that's true? Do you think that's false? Tell me why you think it's true or false. All right, so take some time, pause this, write that down. All right, and then I'll go ahead and put a link in the Google Classroom. You're going to watch this video from the Veritasium channel, and it's going to answer this question and give you kind of an experimental design how he tested whether this is true or not to help our understanding of the process of respiration. And again, if you go back here and think about what we talked about with photosynthesis and how trees gain mass. Is it going to be something for how you lose mass? So one thing we have right here, this is an ATP molecule. Adenine, here's our sugar, and here are 3 phosphates. Adenosine triphosphate, that's what it stands for, ATP. All right, this is the molecule that does all the work in the cell, that moves different parts of your cell, that builds things, all that sort of stuff, moves things in and out of the cell. ATP is the one that does the work. So ATP, that's what we're talking about. That's super important. Let's move this down here. All right. So cellular respiration is how we go from food to ATP. Right? So we've written this down before, but backwards. So here, we're starting with glucose. We're adding our oxygen. So this is aerobic respiration. We're talking specifically about aerobic. So in the presence of oxygen. There's also anaerobic respiration is without oxygen present. We'll talk more about that a little bit. And then we're going to have some enzymes help this whole reaction out. And we're going to produce carbon dioxide, water vapor, or water. And then you get about a total of 38 ATP, anywhere from 30 to 38. Depends on temperature, what enzymes are around, efficiency. But it's a crap ton of them, right? So if we do this without oxygen, we only get 2 made total net, all right? And so we get, 15 times more ATP if we have oxygen present. All right, so if oxygen present, we call it, I accidentally just gave you this answer. Yes, it's aerobic. Anaerobic is without it, so if oxygen is present, it's aerobic respiration. There we go, fantastic. All right, there are 2 kinds of respiration, anaerobic and aerobic. Just talked about that. Maybe you want to pause and copy these definitions down, that's good. All right. All organisms do a type of cellular respiration, but only some can utilize oxygen. And what we need in order to be able to use that oxygen, we need a cell membrane. We need to be able to move protons, electrons against a concentration gradient to move these ATPs and build these ATPs. So our organelle in a eukaryotic cell like us, or a plant, or a fungus, they have mitochondria. Right? Mitochondria. It is similar to the chloroplast in the fact that it also has a lot of membranes, right? We need that membrane for transporting electrons, right? So our first step is glycolysis. all things are going to do glycolysis, whether they're aerobic or anaerobic. Right? So we start with 1 glucose, we get 2 pyruvate, and 2 ATP. We net 2 ATP. We actually need 2 ATP to get this started. It makes 4, so that gives us a total of 2 ATP produced. Right? So get 2 pyruvate and 2 ATP. We're going to use this ATP to help power the next phase, and we're going to use these pyruvate molecules to turn into something else. Where does this happen? It happens in the cytoplasm, so outside of the mitochondria. So things that don't have mitochondria, like a bacteria, they can do glycolysis. And this is enough energy for simple life to happen. We can't get enough energy from just doing this. We do glycolysis, but we also do the aerobic, the second part of this respiration. So there's a little video you can watch. I'll link that. Step 2 is the Krebs cycle. So we take those 2 pyruvate. We're going to make carbon dioxide as a byproduct. It's a waste product. We need to get rid of it. And we get 2 more ATP. And we're going to use these ATP for our electron transport chain. That gives us all of the lots of ATP. So I kind of touched on this. Why don't most bacteria do the citric acid cycle? That's the same thing as the Krebs cycle. So Krebs cycle, citric acid cycle, same thing. Why do most of them not do it? So that Krebs cycle makes our ATPs to power the next part, which is going to be our electron transport chain. But most bacteria don't do that because they don't have the membranes. They don't have the mitochondria, right? The ones that do aerobic respiration, they actually have their outer membrane, their cell membrane kind of folded, and that's actually what we think mitochondria came from. Other cells engulf these folded bacteria, and one piece of evidence of that is they have a different type of DNA than we do. So that your mitochondria, they have circular bacterial DNA instead of chromosomal DNA like what's in your nucleus. Okay. Last one, oxidative phosphorylation, or the electron transport chain. That's when mitochondria are building all these ATP, and this can only happen if oxygen is present. It's going to be a reduction in oxidation reaction. So here we have kind of the steps. I would like you to go ahead, pause, and sketch this on page, I believe it's page 44, right below where you drew your mitochondria. So, or below where you drew your chloroplast. So similar sketch, but this time it's with our mitochondria and respiration. So take your time, pause this, and kind of gives you the basics about what's happening when. Again, this big yellow kidney looking thing, this is our mitochondria. And you know that because we've got all these little things, which are the membrane folds, which are necessary for the electron transport chain. And again, we end up with lots of ATP. Okay. So, it says, give an example of organisms from 3 different kingdoms that use aerobic cellular respiration. Well, this is one of your targets. So we talked about different kingdoms. Are plants going to do aerobic respiration? Yeah, for sure. Are fungi? Yes, but some of them, like yeast, can also do anaerobic, and that's how you make beer, things like this. Protozoans, yes, they'll do aerobic respiration. The bacteria, very few will. There are a couple. Most are anaerobic, and that's why when you put hydrogen peroxide onto like a cut, it bubbles and makes oxygen gas and actually kills those bacteria. And then, of course, most animals are going to do aerobic respiration. So here are some examples. There you go. Great for your targets. Go back, look at your targets, add this to the notes, that sort of thing. Give an example of organisms that use anaerobic respiration. Well, you also use anaerobic respiration. Maybe you've done some sprinting or weightlifting. That happens really fast. You need energy right away. You don't have time to go through the whole process. You'll just be doing lactic acid fermentation. And if you've worked out and haven't worked out for a while, your body isn't good at kind of getting rid of that. You'll get lactic acid buildup, right? fungi I mentioned again. The yeast, they're going to do fermentation. That's how we get beer, right? So if there's no oxygen present, they go to anaerobic fermentation, right? What happens when ATP is turned into ADP? So here's our ATP. We remove one of those, and that's what actually does that work. That's what allows the cell to move. It moves a muscle, twitches a muscle, fires a neuron, something like that, is because we are releasing that phosphate, right? And so when we're doing respiration, what we're trying to do is add those phosphates onto ADP. Right, so go ahead, take some time to write some summaries, write some questions, those sorts of things. Watch the videos that I have linked. They'll help explain a little bit more. And then once you're finished with that, do your respiration and photosynthesis pinwheel. Finish that. All right, thank you very much. Have a great day.